It's time for some straight talk. The big wireless companies charge a boatload for their superior network coverage. But guess what? Straight Talk uses the same cell towers but charges a lot less. Who knew? Well, now you do. And I do. So let's do something. It's time to switch to Straight Talk. Unlimited plans start as low as $35 a month on America's largest, most dependable networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. A month equals 30 days. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
All right, here we are. Great fun in a variety of different places this morning. And, of course, a classic game, too, in the World Series last night as the Astros even matters up with the Dodgers. We'll have our old buddy Buck Showalter now, of course, the manager of the Orioles, with us in just a couple of minutes, and we'll get his take on all the decisions that got made last night. I've told you many times the story. One of my favorite days I ever had here at ESPN, Buck Showalter, when he was working with us before he went to Baltimore, he and I shot a commercial together, one of the ESPN promos together. And we're just, you have a ton of downtime during those days, as you know, Mike.
Right.
And I asked him, take me through all the decisions that a manager is making. And he rattled off about 20 things without even pausing or hesitating or breathing. And then he said, and then they throw the second pitch.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, that's just the way that guy's mind works. So you want to hear good baseball, you got to get it from him. He'll be on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance.
Yeah, I listen. That game last night was this year, right? 19 strikeouts in the game and 8 home runs.
Yep.
We set records for strikeouts here. We set records for home runs.
And a lot of relief pitchers.
Were ridiculous last night with 5 home runs, 3 by the Astros, coming in extra innings. The first last night were ridiculous in that game. Good for, the star players' names in this, but a guy like George Springer, the leadoff hitter, strikes out 4 times in game one in 4 bats. Comes back in this one, 3 for 5 with the 2-run shot in the 11th. Comes back, from the 4 strikeout game. You got to love. You just had one of the worst games on the biggest stage you can have, and to be able to come back for that. Back-to-back, in the 10th inning, Altuve and Correa on home runs. I mean, it was ridiculous what you got. Verlander pitched 6 innings, gave up 2 hits, and was losing 3-1 because both hits were home runs, one a solo and one a 2-run shot. So the Dodgers had them right where they wanted them, where they had been before. Leading after the 8th, 98-0. Their bullpen, 28 innings, a scoreless ball. They were right there. They're winning 3-1, and the bullpen is out on the mound. And give Houston all the credit in the world. 14 hits and 4 home runs, and they take game 2 in L.A.
I will put all of that about how this has been a great encapsulation of the season into a couple of numbers, some of which you referenced already. But again, 14 of the 17 runs scored in this series have come by a home run. 11 of the 28 hits in this series have been home runs. That's basically 40%. There have been more strikeouts than hits. And the Dodgers sent 41 hitters to the plate yesterday. They had 5 hits, 4 home runs, and a single that came in the 10th inning.
Yeah, that one to me, Hembo and I were talking before the game, and he's a baseball guy, and he was even stunned. They had 5 hits. 5 hits. The only non-home run came in the 10th inning. I mean, that's amazing. That is an amazing stat.
And it's what baseball has become right now, and no one knows that better than the people who are still involved in it heavily, and that includes, as promised, our old friend Buck Showalter, now the manager of the Orioles, longtime colleague of ours here at ESPN, and as good as anybody is at breaking down the things he sees on a baseball field. Good morning, Buck Showalter.
Guys, with your job, I got to ask you now, did you stay up and watch all that game? What's your wake-up call? What's your morning look like after a game like that? Because fans are getting up going to work also.
A little bleary. A little bleary.
A lot of coffee, a lot of early coffee, yeah.
A lot of videotape. Hey, I didn't see this place. Show it to me so I can talk about it maybe.
There's all of that. Whatever you see live, what you don't see, there's all kind of tape to look at without question. So, same thing. So, obviously things you do as well, as a manager, watching tape, making game plans. I want to start with this, Buck, because in sports, in all sports, we all know you're going with a game plan, whether it's a football game plan, a baseball game plan, whatever it is. And then it's how much you stick to that game plan or when do you adjust. We had Eduardo Perez on here yesterday saying, listen, Rich Hill is going to throw his 4 innings, and then they're going to go to the bullpen. And I said, okay, I get it. So I just have to ask, if that's the game plan going in, I'm going to give these numbers out. I'm sure, Buck, you know about numbers like this, but for everybody else, Rich Hill has only thrown one time to a guy, the third time through in the postseason. But in the regular season, he threw to a guy a third time 105 times. That batting average was 184, and he only gave up 6 extra base hits. So in 4 innings last night, that's a game plan I know, Buck. But he goes 4 innings, strikes out 7, throws 60 pitches, gives up just 1 run. Is there I know this was the game plan, but, well, he's throwing the rock pretty well. Why not let him continue to throw? I didn't understand them taking Rich Hill out.
Mike, you're trying to get me started, right?
I'm sorry.
Could you guys hear the not sarcasm, just the tinge of emotion in John Smoltz's voice last night?
Yeah.
He was trying to be nice. He was trying not to go there, but you could tell it was like, come on, man. But, the thing I think everybody misses about this is what's driving it. What's driving it is the off days, because during the regular season, you can't do that. People, I hear, this is the way that bullpens should be used, and this is the way things should be done with starters. You can't do that through the season, guys. Why? Because you play every day. If you want to solve this, if you think this is an issue and you want to create more of a postseason that simulates regular season, guys, there's 4 times to manage. You manage in spring training a different way. You manage regular season a different way. And you manage in September with this god-awful thing, 40-man call-up roster baseball expansion, and then you manage different in the off-season. And you have to. And some of us are good at it. Some of us aren't, I guess, because W's and L's. And I stand accused. But if there's 4 different ways to manage. But it's driven by the fact that you have off days. I mean, it's like you got these toys. You got all these rested guys in the bullpen that you never have during the year that have this track record. And you never want to get in this point, well, if I do this, I've got a good answer for why I did this. This is the way we've always done it. But it's driven by the fact that you have these off days and all these rested pitchers. Okay, on the flip side of that, Rich Hill's going to be able to pitch out of the bullpen probably after tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Okay, and all of a sudden he wins the game because Rich Hill is now available. I don't know. But if you really want a true, I personally, most people on the field would love to see you play without off days in the postseason. When we traded for Kurt Schilling out in Arizona, one of our mantles were that we were going to have Schilling and Randy Johnson, which means if they win their starts in the playoffs, we're world champions. And the guys would look at me, what do you mean? I said, well, with the off days and everything, those guys are going to pitch 4 of our 7 games. Mm-hmm. So really, me personally, but you can't do it with the travel between, coast to coast, but you'd love to see, them play 5-7 days in a row, whatever the series is, and you wouldn't have these questions going on.
Mike and Mike, Buck Showalter is with us as we look back on what was a thrilling game last night. Beyond that and all the little decisions that go into it, I mentioned right before you came on, the game is in every way a microcosm of the sport today. Feels like every single hit is a home run. It feels like every single out is a strikeout, a ton of different pitchers. And last night, again, the Dodgers had 41 hitters at the plate. They had 5 hits, 4 home runs, and a single in the 10th inning. What do you make of that? You've been around the game forever to see these changes. What do you make of the sport and the way it's played right now?
Well, if you think about, Mike, what's driving it is really salaries. I mean, until someone gets penalized in arbitration for a strikeout, mm-hmm. And it's about, what creates WAR, what creates WOBA, what creates slugging percentage, and what's being compensated. What did you find more exciting last night? Players, Forsythe scoring from second on the single to right with a great arm in right field. Was it going to get there in time? Was he going to be able to shut down the plate and not block it? Or the fact that some guy hits a home run and sticks his tongue out and runs around the bases. It's to each his own. Some people, you'll go a month and a half in the big leagues before you see a hit and run play. Some of my biggest decisions over the course of the night sometime are whether to run 3-2 or whether to hit 3-0. Because, outs are so precious. Sacrifice bunting, you got to really pick your spot and who it is. We'll have guys come up from the minor leagues and I'll say, when's the last time you sacrificed bunting? They went, 10th grade in high school. But they're hitting third their whole life. They're not asked to do those things. And, you've got to teach it. So, it's a different game, but it's also kind of what's driving. Statistics are driving it. And the compensation for those statistics, that's what people are embracing. So it's a hard sell to players as a manager or a coach that, hey, 2 strikes, we need to, choke up a little bit maybe and punch the ball to left field. Well, what's the difference between a strikeout and a ground out at second base? and then you better have an answer.
Buck Showalter joining us. This season, 140 players struck out at least 100 times. In 1992, Buck's first season as a big league manager, there were 34 players that struck out 100 times. And speaking of strikeouts, in Game 1, George Springer strikes out, gets 4 at-bats, strikes out 4 times. In the game last night, he's 3 for 5 with a 2-run shot in the 11th inning. From a manager standpoint, and I know all of you are different, what would you say to a player like that after that Game 1 that he had and before the start of Game 2? What, as a manager, what words of wisdom or what coaching, what managing, what would you do for him, if anything?
Well, Mike, this may sound a little, but I'll bet you not a whole lot with AJ or myself. It's this guy's got a huge track record, and all of a sudden after one game, and it's really, as it goes, he's not in the upper echelon of strikeouts, but he's hitting at the top of the order. And the words I keep hearing are contact to damage ratio. I hear all these, and you got to kind of sometimes scratch your head and keep in mind that the game has changed, and you've got to embrace some of these things if you want to stay competitive. But I wouldn't say a whole lot. I mean, it's like stating the obvious. The last thing a manager or coach wants to be is Captain Obvious and have a player walk away and going, no, you know what? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know that. Okay. And the pitching, I looked at it the other day. There were only 5 teams in the American League that finished over 500. Soak that one in sometime, which tells you how close they all are. And it's about streaks, about extending the good ones and shortening the bad ones. But that's really what drives a lot of this, because the regular season is so different, and you've got to be able to adjust as the season goes on. But it's hard. I mean, that's the big separator in baseball is you play every day, and these guys don't want to. You got to be careful about stating something that they already get. They got a track record. Do you trust it or not? Hey, listen, we've had one game in the playoffs, but the pitching's so good this time of year. That's why these teams are playing. That's why if you look at all these teams where they finish in pitching, there's a reason why they're there. And when you see all these strikeouts and what have you, I'm telling you, I'm not one of those guys. Everybody was the greatest at their time, but the players are better than they've ever been. Okay, they're pitching, the average velocity is the highest it's ever been. And you have to commit so much to the velocity of the fastball that to get to it today, then you're so susceptible to something soft.
Mike and Mike, Buck Showalter with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. Take us to a feeling that you know so well. I made the comment earlier today. Mike and I, and those of us who do what we do for a living, we have the luxury of seeing the result and then commenting on the decision. You guys have to make these decisions without knowing what the results are going to be. So Dave Roberts, forgetting about when he took out Rich Hill last night, because it still worked.
Right.
He's got a 2-run lead in the 8th inning, and he's got his bullpen up. He's got Kenley Jansen, who was sensational. So that was his plan. He decided to go to Jansen for 6 outs last night, and in the end, it doesn't work. How do you sleep that night? How do you wake up in the morning when you made a decision that you firmly believed in at the time for all of the reasons that you did, and it goes the wrong way on your team?
Well, I think everybody's different, and this time of year saying, well, that's just the way we've always done it, or that was the plan. It may be that, you've got so much cachet built up with your team, and you're all on such a same page, and it's you're the one doing that press conference after the game. No, it's painful. For 99% of them, it's painful, and nobody's case hurrah. It's one of the reasons why you have these jobs is that you care, and it does, and you do live and breathe it every day. And I think one thing you learn is not to read anything or not take too much. There's some knowledgeable people talking about, but you got a lot of people talking about these things that really don't know what they're talking about, and they, unlike you guys, but sit there. That really, I heard them going on about when Girardi's decision about instant replay and some of the stuff that's going on with the post-game analysts. Because if you walk in my house, the volume will be off on a game, and it doesn't. I don't enjoy the game as much because you got a lot of people talking about things that really haven't walked the walk and don't really know what goes on day to day in the dugout during the course of the game. They don't even know the replay rules and what goes on behind the scenes when that phone call, you make that phone call, or you're watching these replays and how much time you have and how much time you don't have and what really goes on in New York. But yet everybody's an expert once you go on the air with it. So you've got to fight through that stuff because guess what? You got another game the next day.
What happens on this day off? Do you have guys that just want to get away from it? I'm sure you probably get together. You guys want to just be away from it for a while as much as they can, or the grinders that want to be there all the time? How does that work?
Yeah. you know what happens. You kind of let them have their space, but and do what they do, because players are such a creature of routine. A lot of it's spent, traveling, obviously, when you're going from the West Coast, to the Central Time Zone to Houston. I mean, it was almost New York. But basically, you got so many commitments media-wise. Certain people have to show up. I'm sure there'll be some form of optional workout, even though I'm sure the Dodgers will want to get used to playing in that ballpark, because there's a different. I don't think they played there in interleague play. I'm not sure, but you do have to have some familiarity with it, and so there's some things you have to do to get used to the new venue, because that is a very distinctly different place that you have to play in Houston.
We are Mike and Buck Showalter. I want to make sure everyone who is listening to us in the Baltimore area is aware of the 8th annual Trick or Trot 5K and 1 mile walk coming up this Saturday in Baltimore to support kids in foster care. Buck, what can you tell us about the event?
Well, I appreciate you bringing it up. It's something my wife and I have done, since we've been here. It's just, what happens a lot, Mike, is that, these kids, somehow they get to 3, 4, 5, 6 years old and aren't adopted, that are in the, and what happens? Everybody doesn't think about what happens when they're 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And it's just a way it's grown every year, and we're so proud of the community and the organization and the people that come out and support it. So it's a big fundraiser for us this weekend. It's Halloween, it's costumes, it's a race that ends at Camden Yards and starts right outside. So it's a lot of fun. We look forward to it every year, but I appreciate you bringing it up, because we need all the support. It's grown every year, and a lot of it's, directly correlated to the support that the city of Baltimore has had for it. But thanks for bringing it up.
Oh, it's great, for a great cause. There's no doubt I would do the mile walk, without question.
I know. I blow the horn at the start, and I'm waiting at the finish line.
There you go. Even better.
Buck, it's always so good to chat again. I'm sure we'll catch up again soon. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the series, and good luck with the event Saturday.
Thanks, Buck.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Y'all take care.
He's the best. Buck Showalter, again, I so enjoyed.
I love listening to him.
I will say this, that one of the many great things about working here is that you get the opportunity to sit and just listen to people like him. And Buck is a computer. I mean, his brain is like a computer when it comes to baseball. Some people are like that. There have been, more successful managers, but there has never been a more analytical person that I've been around in the game of baseball than Buck Showalter. No one takes more things into account when talking about the sport.
Right.
And so I got the opportunity to sit and listen to him. I would just sit in the newsroom back in the day when I would anchor the evening sports centers, which was for most of the time that I've been doing this show, even. Especially during the baseball playoffs, he'd always be there. He did Baseball Tonight, him and Kruk, all those years. And they would just be sitting in there, and they would just be talking. And if you're smart, you'll just listen.
Yep.
Just sit back and listen to them talking about baseball. Al Leiter would be there sometimes and talking about it. And you would learn a tremendous amount about the game. And baseball is such a complicated game. Like football and basketball, I don't pretend to know hockey hardly at all. I admire the sport and I enjoy watching it, but I don't pretend that I know it, and we don't talk about it that much. Football, basketball, and baseball we talk about like crazy. Football, and even football, which is a fairly complicated game, is actually quite simple. Like most of the things that you see, you can identify fairly easily. You can tell me things about blocking schemes I don't know.
I can get intricate, yeah.
But most fans can generally see what's going on. Baseball has a lot going on that you don't know about.
It does, unless your pitcher's dealing. Then it simplifies pretty much.
Right, but the way he's dealing, like the way it's so mental.
You can break everything down to calling a game and such.
All those. That's why, like, every announcer should either. I mean, I don't want to, because there are a lot of great announcers that did all kinds of things. But I want to hear from pitchers and catchers, because that's 90% of the sport, especially now, when the ball is almost never hit to anybody. The ball either goes over the fence or the catcher catches it, and it's either ball 4 or strike 3. There's so much going on between the pitcher and the catcher. I like hearing from them. I love Smoltz. I think Smoltz does a really good job.
I do as well, and I love all the intricacies of it, and the which also leads to probably the sport where you overthink things. And you overmanage at times and think too much, because you do have some downtime between pitches or downtime here and there where you can overthink something and then second-guess your decision.
Well, I befriended, when I first started in this business in Chicago when I was just a kid reporter. And if there's one smart thing I think I've done in my career is I've just listened to people who I thought were good at what they were doing. And we had a columnist in Chicago at that time at the Tribune named Bernie Lincecum. I thought was a very good. You know Bernie?
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was very good. And at one time I was just listening to him talk, and he said, the beauty of baseball is it's about everything that happens in between the action. He said all the other sports are about the action. But baseball, the beauty of baseball is about all the things that happen in between the action. And that's what it is. And candidly, we live in a society that appreciates that kind of thing less and less, which is why baseball is trying to make less and less of that time.
Right.
Right? They want less time between the action because we now want to fill that time with stuff. Whereas we were more than willing to sit around and just wait for the next cool thing to happen. Now you got to go do something else.
Because a lot of times in that I know what you're talking about. A lot of people don't see that, though. You know, especially like on TV, you don't see in between the action. Like when I'm calling a game, like when there's a break in the action or a changeover, I'm locked onto the sideline. I want to see reactions. I want to see what's going on there. That tells me a lot. Well, if you're watching on TV, you're not getting that. You're not seeing that. So you can understand it to a point of wanting to get rid of that time because people don't really get to see that time or really make hay of what's going on.
Right. But I guess what I'm thinking of is I'm just envisioning my dad sitting in the as a kid, as a boy, sitting in the bleachers at Yankee Stadium, the old Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, and like in between pitches, I'm guessing that he and his friends who he'd go to the game with would be talking about what might happen next, and that kind of thing. Now, we don't talk about what might happen next. Give me the next thing real quick. Otherwise, I'm checking my phone. I got a text. I'm going to tweet
what's
this.
The next thing I'm going to eat?
Exactly. What else is on TV? I can probably change the channel and get back here in time to see whatever happens next. And if I miss it, I can always rewind it and watch it because I have it going on the DVR anyway. It's just a different time, and we're consuming this stuff
interesting is you said one thing
differently.
you think you've done right is listen to people. You listen to people, but then you usually tell them they're wrong.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
No, the one thing I've done smart, really, in 18 years is just not listen to you.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
I want to read you this email that I just got. I just think it's interesting, and I want to hear your perspective.
Okay.
We'll get to the Notre Dame thing in a second. But a guy I know named Drexel, a smart guy, sent me a note and said, in regard to the conversation we had with Buck about making decisions, Rich Hill, etc.
Right.
He said, too often we judge decisions based on outcomes. Just because there's a bad outcome doesn't mean it was a bad decision. Last night is a perfect example. We can't always control outcomes, but if we make decisions based on solid values, that is, we make them for the right reasons, we should be able to rest easy. For example, years ago, the Raiders had a habit of taking a flyer on some sprinter to play receiver. Even if that worked out, it was a bad decision. But when Ryan Leaf was selected early, it was a good decision. There seemed to be nearly universal regard for his potential. It was just a bad outcome. Your business is to look at outcomes, but for decision makers, they know the assessment of a decision is not simply a function of
Completely
outcome.
agree. It's not. It's just.
But do you think that makes you sleep better?
No. Oh no, absolutely not. But it's the decision didn't work. Doesn't mean it was the decision didn't work, but it was just. Oh, it was the right decision. I hit on 16 every time. Every time. The dealer's showing a 7 or higher, I'm hitting every single time. And a lot of times it doesn't work, but then it does. But I'm not going to put myself in the situation of second-guessing it, of going, this time I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to do it. Now, that's not the same as what your gut say about a pitcher who you plan on taking out after 4 innings, but he's thrown 60 pitches. He struck out 7. He's dealing pretty well, only gave up 1 run. Do I try and get a little more out of him? But this is your game plan. That's the one thing I can say is in sports, game plans change. I don't think there's any game I've ever played in my life where there wasn't some tweak that went on during the game based on what was happening in the game. Blackjack, I got the same cards coming out, same time, same cards coming out. In sports, things change. Things go on out there that make you say, okay, well, this was in our game plan. That's a one thing that happens when you come off the field is your coach, either the coordinator or your coach, comes to you and say, what's happening out there? Well, coach, just like we practice, where they're running well, you know what? What we're seeing out there, we didn't see during the week. This is what they're doing, right? Okay, this is how we're going to adjust. It's what happens all the time. And a lot of time, you can have, as I said, X's and O's adjustment, or, I got 2 running backs. Who am I going to stick with? The one with the hot hand. Now I got to decide, if it's close, who's got the hotter hand? Who would I want to do that with? What do I do with a pitcher? At this point, I kind of want him out, But, boy, oh boy, he's throwing pretty well. Does my gut say leave him in any longer, or do I stick with what the game plan was?
What I think you're giving voice to is the frustration that a lot of longtime baseball fans have, which is that the gut instinct has almost been taken completely out of the sport, and that it is really so much about the numbers right now. And the way that was it, because while baseball is not cards, it's not pure mathematics. There are this many aces, there are this many queens, there are this many threes. It is closer to that than football is, and so they go with the numbers.
But what I'll say about that is every game plan I got, college, pro is even more in depth, they were numbers. They told you on second and 7+, third and 7+, second and 5 or less, third and 2 or more, third and 2 or less. You had what their tendencies, the plays they actually ran. You had all those things. You had all the percentages and the statistics. So the game plan was built around that. They're more apt in this formation, in this down and distance to run it. That was where I had to specialize because I wasn't a great athlete. I had to go on technique and I had to go on watching tape. What was my guy doing? And I could recognize, it's not that Reggie and Jerome didn't look at game plans, but they could just walk up and say, I don't care what you're going to do, I'm going to beat you. I could line up and say, my intent, I plan on beating you this play. That's the way I was born and raised, but I need to know more. I need more info. So I was that guy in the D-line. When I saw the formation on 3rd and 5 or less, 3rd and 7, but whatever it was, I saw the formation. My mind immediately culled down the plays that I usually saw them run during the week on tape, and I would pass that information along. So numbers have been part of it for a long time.
Right.
But I get it. I get the gut still has to come into play at some point.
Or it doesn't. And that's what I'm saying is what the numbers tell us with 100% certainty is what has happened. But they do not tell us with 100% certainty what's going to happen. And because people particularly will go against their own tendencies. In cards, it does work that way. They can tell you with 100% certainty. If you hit on what you know for sure is that if you will hit on 16 against a face card 1,000 times, you will win 47 or 48% of the time. I forget exactly what the number is. Because you can only tilt the odds that close to being in your favor in blackjack. Otherwise, there would be no, Las Vegas casinos if the odds could ever go into your favor. And in baseball, it obviously doesn't work quite that way. By the way, tomorrow at this time, we'll be talking with Tim Tebow about, among other things, Ohio State and his old coach, Urban Meyer, looking for a huge win against Penn State. I got the baseball number. Go ahead, Mike, read it. It's an interesting number on the baseball rating for last night.
Well, last night, 8 o'clock to 12:45, it was a 10-8. What was it, game one? 10-2, did we say? It was a 10-2 or 10-3?
I believe it was 10-2.
10-2 or 10-3.
And it had been 10-3 2 years ago.
So this was 2 years ago. This was a 10-8 last year. Game 2 of Cubs and Cleveland, which, we know all about that series. That was a 12-3.
Yeah, 12-3.
So 12-3. And in the game 1, it was a difference of 10-2 and 12-something. But a couple of years ago, Mets in Kansas City, where game 1 was just a 0.1 off, 10-2 to 10-3, where last night was a 10-8. 2 years ago, game 2, New York Mets, Kansas City, was a 9-3. So it beat it pretty well.
So the rating is down 12% from last year, but up 16% from 2 years ago. There are a million different things in that. Remind me what Game 2 was of the Mets and Royals. Now, that's so long ago, I don't remember the details of the game. Last night's a classic, so no one turns it off. Right, the audience, last night's one of those games that it builds and builds and builds as the night goes on.
Does Game 3 go last year? 1-1. I mean, I know first game you got Keuchel, you got Kershaw. Game 2 you got Verlander. You do have Yu Darvish in this one. But, I mean, does that immediately kind of turn people off and say, you know what, I'll check in on it?
It's a Friday night.
Yeah.
Friday night doesn't. It's typically not a very good TV night. We'll see, but it doesn't have a lot of sports competition. Like tonight, there's an NFL game.
Right.
Tomorrow night there won't be. Saturday night they'll be up against huge college football and all the rest of that.
They will.
And obviously Sunday as well. And then we'll see. Hopefully the series will continue beyond that. But I think they have to be very happy with the rating. It's up 16% from 2 years ago.
I absolutely agree. I agree with you when you say you kind of got to throw out last year and what that was with the Cubs and the Indians.
It was a literally speaking, a once-in-a-lifetime circumstance. Yeah. The Cubs, the city of Chicago was as into that as any city could ever be, and it's the third biggest market in the country. And B, the whole country got into it.
Yep.
The whole country got into the Cubs.
I'll tell you what, every game of this, if it were a 10 or higher, I would think they'd have to think that was a major success.
Oh, absolutely. We'll see what the weekend looks like, right. and they're all hoping they get themselves back to L.A. next Tuesday night, where they will do a huge rating, right. And if they get to a Game 7, it'll be a huge win.
SportsCenter brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Other wireless providers say they're going to cut your bill in half, but who knows what kind of coverage you're going to get. With Straight Talk Wireless, you get nationwide coverage on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks, and their no-contract unlimited plan is $45 a month.
You know, again, so Golic and Golic Jr. and anyone else in the studio who wants to is going to take part in this challenge to eat these chips, this Carolina Reaper Pepper chip. And I only know about the Carolina Reaper Pepper because when you were doing the Ghost Pepper Challenge, yes. We did a little looking into it and discovered the Carolina Reaper Pepper is a hotter pepper.
A hotter pepper.
And I remember asking the question at the time, but I don't remember what the answer is. Why do we make these things? Like, why do we have peppers that are so hot that you can't put that in a seasoning? No one's cooking with Carolina Reaper Pepper, are they?
Sure they are.
They are?
Yeah.
Something so hot that it makes you want to faint the second you even.
You can use a little bit of it, so you're not, so it's somewhat hot, and you don't have to throw the whole. But some people like it hotter.
I get that.
If you put a little bit in there, you can make it,
You go get a spicy dish somewhere. There's Carolina Reaper Pepper in it.
I would imagine so. Yes.
I can't fathom that. Again, you doing that Ghost Pepper Challenge. Look at the looks. I remember Mike and Jamel were here. They had done it. You were dipping it. Look at Nurse Mello. Yeah. We're watching the
sliders were made with it in it, but then I dipped in it. All that, and in all seriousness, because we don't want anybody to. I mean, you've seen people, get a little, throw up or
bad stuff.
We're going to make sure there's milk available because that's what you need to drink after you have it. But you
still had a terrible day, right? The whole rest of the day for you was awful after the Ghost.
Again, I ate 3. I ate more because I wanted to eat more sliders than Jamel had eaten, so I ate too many sliders, and I dipped it. I did it to myself, and it was an awful day at home.
So you think they eat just one Carolina Reaper Pepper chip?
I'm hoping my day isn't ruined. I can't say that for a fact. I have no idea. But all I know is there does need to be milk available, so everybody can wash it down how they choose. Because we showed the young lady on the news team that did it, and she drank coffee after it. She ended up throwing up. She's fine. But she said it stuck with her for a while, no doubt about it. Listen, I'm not saying this is the smartest move in the world, but why not? I'm going to go around once. I'm going to swim with sharks come next March with Sydney, so, I mean, why not?
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
All those tweets and more through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Nothing makes up for a football obsession like bouquets from 1-800-Flowers.com. When you order a dozen red or assorted roses for only $29.99, you will get another dozen plus a vase absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Guys, my ENPS isn't working. Can you click on that Dolphins Cutler note that I just saw flash by my screen? It's not that one. It's the next one. Here we go. Despite cracked ribs, Miami Dolphins quarterback Jay Cutler is expected to be available a week from Sunday against the Raiders. Remember, the Dolphins play tonight against Baltimore. Cutler suffered multiple cracked ribs last Sunday against the Jets in the third quarter. He has a one-year, $10 million contract. He's thrown for 995 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 5 picks in 6 games. Matt Moore came in, replaced him, and led the Dolphins to a win last week. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If Moore plays well tonight and the Dolphins win, he doesn't have to set the world on fire, but if he plays well and the Dolphins win.
One game, I don't know.
Any chance in the world you think they give the ball back to Cutler next week?
Yeah, I do. One game sample of your backup coming in and starting a game and maybe doing well to benching the guy that you had, even though Cutler was not playing great by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know. If Matt Moore had a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, and was playing well, I could see them leaving him out. Now, is Cutler going to come back? It says could play possibly. I mean, you're talking, and I'm just, if he has some cracked ribs, you're talking the needle and a nice pad on it to be able to play, I would imagine, because I've had that. I had the cartilage torn between the ribs, and you feel 80 when you breathe, and the needle makes you forget about it. So I don't know if he will or won't, but it's one way to not feel the pain there, especially of breathing, and you put a pad over it as well. We don't know for sure he's going to play, but may be available. One game is tough to just say, you know what, the starter we had and the guy we brought in is now on the bench.
All right, so we'll see what winds up happening with that again tonight. Dolphins and Ravens. I do believe the Dolphins will win. You?
Yes, I believe they will as well.
All right, so we both like Miami. Let me finish it with this. 538.com did a deep dive into the college football playoff a week before the first rankings come out. And the headline for us was their discovery or their belief that even if Notre Dame runs the table which the model gives them a 21% chance of doing, and they have tough games ahead. They got to play NC State this weekend. They still have Miami and Stanford. So that sounds about right. They have about a 20% chance of winning all the rest of the games. If they don't, then the rest of it becomes irrelevant. But even if they do, even if the Irish run the table, 538 is telling us they'd only have a 47% chance of making the playoff. Meaning what they're telling us is it is less likely that they will that they will make the playoff. I'm trying to phrase this the best way. That it is unlikely. There's a better chance they will not make it, even if they win out, than there is they will make it. And I will say, while I'm not disputing their numbers and all the things they're looking at, I will stand by what I said. I believe if Notre Dame wins out, they're going to make the playoff.
I want to believe that as well. I do, that if they go, because it really is a hard schedule. I'll never forget in 2012 when the boys were on that Notre Dame team that went undefeated, and before the season, everybody talked about how difficult the schedule it was. And then when Notre Dame kept winning those games, everybody said, oh, well, it ain't that hard. I mean, it's a hard schedule they played then, and it's a hard schedule they're playing now. So when you start going strength of schedule, the feather's going to be in their cap. But they are going to have, so while if they're in it, I will defend it because it's my school. It's good. To me, it's still going to be interesting because they'll have one less game. Now, we've already seen in the last couple of years, you got to take the lead from the 12 or 13 people, however many they're going to have in there, that are deciding this. It's not the country. It's those people. What's their criteria? Last year we found out it doesn't have to be a conference championship. So if TCU wins, because if you sit there and talk about one-loss conference champs, say Clemson in the ACC, say TCU in the Big 12, I kind of think the Pac-12 is out of it, though you can have a one-loss team win the Pac-12. They all get an extra game that Notre Dame does. They all could have the same amount of losses as Notre Dame does. Notre Dame would have one fewer game, but the best loss. Until you get into...
And they would have beaten two of the Pac-12 big boys.
Yes, they would.
They smashed USC,
well,
and in our scenario, they'd have to have beaten Stanford.
Let's see where USC ends up as a big boy. They're one that if they start to go down, you know what's helping Notre Dame now? Michigan State playing extremely well.
And Georgia.
Absolutely, Georgia. So that's the scenario I've thrown out there. If Georgia and Alabama are undefeated going into the SEC championship game, and Alabama wins a 20-19 game, I mean, does Georgia then get in over Notre Dame with one loss? Georgia's losses to Alabama, Notre Dame's losses to Georgia. Here's the interesting thing. I could see a case where Georgia would get in over Notre Dame there. If it were reversed, if Georgia beat Alabama 20-17 or 20-19, I could see Alabama then being out and Notre Dame in, because Notre Dame's schedule would have been way more difficult, I think, than Alabama's schedule, right?
Be more difficult than Georgia's, too.
Yeah, but Georgia would have been undefeated, so they're going to be in.
No, but I mean, in the reverse scenario, you're putting Georgia in ahead of them because they had a 1-point win head-to-head.
To me, I go a lot head-to-head.
No, they didn't last year.
I know. That's the thing. They're telling you kind of what the criteria can be.
And I'm telling you, if the Irish win out, they're going to get in.
I'm with you. I
Rest
want
easy,
it to
my
be that
friend.
way. Okay.
We both like the Dolphins tonight. We'll see what happens, and we will see you back in better than ever tomorrow for a jam-packed football Friday. See you then, Mike and Mike.